Today I'm going to teach you how to turn some old cutlery into a badass ring. Stay tuned. Greetings adventurers and welcome to Skill Tree, where we learn how to do just about everything. So for today's episode, I saw a really cool project that I wanted to give a try. Specifically, it's making some sort of a spoon ring. It's a ring made from a spoon. Not a lot of nuance there, just is what it is. Anyways, I thought it was really cool and I thought I could try my hand at doing it. Before we get started though, my analytics say that only about 36% of you who watch us often are actually subscribed. So if you could do me the favor and hit that subscribe button and don't forget to ring the bell, it really would mean a lot to me. Okay, so for starters, I'm not really making a spoon ring, because all I got is this here fork. It's a cheap one that came in like a camping set, but damn it, it's what I got, so I'm gonna make it work. Also, quick note is the one I'm using is steel. So the way I'm doing it is showing you how to make something out of stainless steel. Normally, when you watch those like spoon videos, what they're doing is they're getting an antique spoon that's usually made out of silver or some other soft metal. With that, you don't really need to heat it up or anything. You actually have this little press that'll help form it into a little ring. But we're gonna try to do the majority of this on the cheap, and stainless steel is what I got, so here we go. So to start off, I just put this bad boy in my clamp and I use some snips to remove that handle. This handle is what I'm going to be making the ring out of. That said, it started off with this like red coating on it, so I wanted to remove that before I started doing anything else. This came off pretty easily with just some sandpaper, leaving me with just the raw steel. Also, if you're asking how I knew it was steel, one, it was magnetic, and two, it says stainless steel, right on the back, stainless steel. Pretty easy. I also went back in with a file just to round off that working edge there, so I didn't get cut while I was trying to like manipulate it and fold it around. Cool, so the ring I wanted to make was actually a pinky ring. I wore one during a LARP, specifically this one here, that I made my signet ring. While I was wearing it, I kind of got accustomed to wearing it, so I figured, why not? Let's do it again. That said, I don't know the size of my ring finger, so I just kind of used this ring as my sizing. Though if you don't have a ring that fits whatever finger to use as sizing, they either sell like little things you can use to size it at like a Michael's or whatever. That or you can just take like a string or something, wrap it around your finger, and that should do you. You can like lay that out afterwards against a ruler or something and get your measurements. Now, since this is steel, I'm going to have to harden this and kind of forge it into the shape I want it to be. But again, I want this to be really simple and kind of as cheap as possible. So I just looked around at the crap I had and found this big old drill bit here that is almost the exact size of my ring. I'm not expecting you to happen to have the same stuff. You can try to be creative if you want, or you can just visit some of the links that I have down here that have some of the actual like ring making mandrels, right? Which are just sized exactly, and you could use something like that too. So with that figured out, I just busted out my blowtorch here and started heating up the metal until it was glowing a cherry red. Then I walked over to my vise, which had the drill bit in it, and used it like an anvil to start shaping my ring. As you can see here, within the first few taps, I've got the beginning of that circle. From here, it's pretty much just rinse and repeat. I keep heating up the metal, bringing it back to my anvil, pounding it into shape. Now, once I got it to this point here, it was almost turned back on itself. I had to make a decision. If I just wanted this to be like a circle, if I wanted to overlap itself, I decided I kind of wanted the arms to like miss itself, so it almost wrap around me like a snake or something. So to make this happen, I just took two pliers and bent it just off center so it would miss itself as it turned around. Then again, it was just more of the same, heating it up, bring it to the anvil, and pounding that sucker into shape. Now, because the metal is so thin, it heats up really fast. Unfortunately, it also cools down really fast. So I found it a real pain to like get it up to temperature, get it into place right where I wanted it, and pound it into shape before it lose that heat. So instead, I just kind of left it in place and heated it right there on my little drill bit anvil thing, which turned out working like perfectly. I didn't have to move it. It was really fast to shape it that way. And when all was said and done, I had this little shape here, which honestly looked really cool just like it was and fit on my finger perfectly. Except it was far too big, right? Like how large that was made it so that I couldn't even really close my pinky. Just way too wide for that space. But that's okay, because now we get into the cleanup phase of this where we get it more into the dimensions we want and also try to get like that shiny metal back. Now, if you're hell-bent on doing this just with hand tools, you for sure can just use a file and some sandpaper. But I have my table sander in a limited amount of time, so I just use that, starting with thinning out the entire ring by pushing the edges into the sandpaper. You'll also notice here my hands are really wet. While doing this, there's obviously a lot of friction, so the metal heats up a lot. By keeping it wet, it just keeps it cool enough to still work with, and stops it from burning through my sandpaper. Once I was happy with the overall shape, I moved to sanding it by hand just to get that shine back and make sure everything was nice and smooth. I did this with multiple grits of sandpaper, starting with I think it was around 200 grit, and then working my way all the way to 600. But just to add that little extra that shine, I decided to use some of this jeweler's rouge here. You don't have to. I have this because I do leather working, and jeweler's rouge is what you use to sharpen all the swivel knives and stuff. But it's jeweler's rouge. It does a really good job just shining up metal. So to use it, I just scribble it on the back side of some leather, and then run my ring across it to polish it up. And look at that! Look at how friggin' pretty that is. That's a ring. Not only that, but that reduced width makes it so that it's actually comfortable to wear. I'd genuinely be happy with it just like that. In fact, I wore it just like that for 3 days to make sure it was still comfortable and it didn't annoy me at all. And it was great. Honestly, the only thing that was annoying was it fit so well that the natural changing of my body shape, so at night, I would swell a little bit. So I'd wake up and it would feel really tight. But then by midday, it was loose enough that I can just kind of take it off and put it back on, which I think means it's the perfect size. I think if I were to change it to be a little bit bigger, it would just kind of fall off. And if it was any smaller, it would be too tight in the morning. Long story short, if you're making your own, now would be a good time to just kind of wear it and test it out before you make any final changes to it. But although that does look nice, I wanted to add something extra, something to make it really mine. Now, I'm a big fan of memento mori designs, right? The understanding that you're not going to be around forever, so get done the things you want to get done. Don't stress too much about the things you can't accomplish. I think it's nice to have that kind of a reminder on you. So I decided to go kind of with that theme. To do that, I made this design here. One part of it is fire, and the other part of it is Latin that translates to pass the flame. It's basically what I try to do with this channel, right? That passion and the knowledge and whatever else I learn, pass it on to you while I can. I just think it's a fun thought that things that I might teach you that I learned from somebody else will just continue to echo throughout time. I find that really poetic and a really nice thing to leave around. To make this happen, I'm going to be using a technique that I've used before called electro etching. You don't need anything fancy for it. You can use just a 9-volt battery and some wires. In fact, if you want the basics on how to do it, you can just check out this episode right here. I decided to change this one up a little bit though. So the way I decided to use this starts with some of this vinyl here, in which I cut out my shapes with my Cricut cutter. Again, if you want to be doing this even more on the cheap, no special equipment, all you have to do is use something like paint or nail polish. You cover over the thing that you want to etch, and then you just kind of scrape away your design. Basically, wherever bare metal is showing is what's going to be etched. Anything that's covered up is protected from this process, so it'll stay proud, it'll stay higher. In fact, when you're done with this one, there's a really cool video of somebody electro etching a knife down in the description below. It's one of those really satisfying to watch videos too. I highly recommend it. Anyway, to get it on my ring, I just cut them out from the rest of the vinyl, carefully positioned it where it should go on my ring, and then weeded out all the material I didn't need, leaving me with exactly how I want it to sit on my ring here. I then went through with the text portion of this, making sure it fell exactly how I needed it to, and it filled up the space how I wanted. And I like that. I really like the way that looks, the way it'll kind of wrap around and underneath is where it says the thing. I dig the design. I'm kind of proud of it. Though I also wanted the edges of it to be raised too, so I just carefully cut some strips out and wrapped them along those edges just so they were covered up. Just to make extra sure I didn't accidentally etch the edges as well, I decided to bust out some of this nail polish here and carefully paint all along the edges. Cool, with that all set, it's time to get to etching. Now, like I said, you can do this just with a 9-volt battery, though in the past, I've done it with one of those battery jumpers for your car, which puts out 12 volts. And it just so happens that I have this little extra power block that usually goes to my lights here that puts out 12 volts DC and has a broken plug. I never throw anything away, by the way. I have a little bag full of all wires and junk that no longer work. This proves it though. I found a use for it. Pfft, tell me to throw my stuff away. Anyways, to make this work, I just nipped off that tip there and then use my knife to expose those wires. My hope is that by not using a battery pack of any sort and having something that actually plugs into the wall, I'm gonna get that consistent DC voltage coming out, as opposed to a battery, which over time is draining, right? As I'm using it, it's slowly getting less and less efficacious. Aside from the current though, the only other thing you're going to need is an electrolyte of some sort. Luckily, this is dead easy to make. You just take some water and you dump as much salt as it will take. Once the salt stops disappearing in the water, you know you have enough. Cool, so in order to make this work, you have to know which side of your wires there is the negative or the positive. A really easy way to do this is to connect them both to a piece of metal that you put into the cup. Once it plugs in, one of them is gonna hiss. That one that's hissing is your negative. This, by the way, in the whole like using the power block and everything, also comes from that video that I linked in the description below. Again, super helpful. Okay, so to make this work, you need the positive side to be touching bare metal of the thing that you want to engrave. To help make this happen and to make the whole like etching of the circular thing a little bit more easy, I just kind of put it on my slicker brush here and then wedged in this metal skewer just behind it. So remember, I didn't cover up the inside of the ring, so the inside is still bare metal. And the metal of that skewer is gonna help complete that circuit there. Then I just attach that positive side to that metal skewer using alligator clips, which will help complete that circuit there. Now on the other lead, I have alligator clips holding on to just a little piece of metal, which I've wrapped some cotton around. That cotton is then dipped into our electrolyte solution and wiped across the surface of my ring. This immediately causes hissing and bubbling, and looking at the Q-tip, you can totally see the metal that's being removed. I tried my best to just kind of dab at this evenly, because I was worried that if I brushed across it too much, it would actually remove my masks, right? So trying to do it as evenly as possible, I just worked my way around the ring, slowly etching my design into place. Quick note on this, you do not want to be breathing in what's going on there. I have like a really strong fan over here, and I have this little vapor removal thing here right above it. If you don't have any of that stuff, I just recommend doing this outside and maybe wear a mask. Now, I would have been at this for a long time, making it as deep as possible, but after a little bit, the M here decided it didn't want to be part of the party anymore. And I was afraid if I tried to reposition another one of the stickers right there, it just wouldn't match up right and it would look funny. And by looking at it, it kind of already looked good. I wasn't upset about it. So calling that fate, I just scratched off all of the rest of it and pulled away the masking on the sides. And as I was pulling it away, look at how cool that looks. Oh my God, it was so neat. I think that's the most even job I've ever done with the electro etching here. I'm very, very proud of it. Just to help remove any of the gunk, I went back in with a little wire brush on my Dremel. And hot damn, that's beautiful. Everything that was covered up is still really like mirror polished shiny. The stuff that was exposed though has this cool, almost frosted look to it. Oh, it looks so cool. That said, I did want the lettering in the design to stick out just a little bit more. I read the easiest way like jewelers and stuff make this happen is by actually just busting out a Sharpie and coloring it all over your design. Once you're sure it's in all the little nooks and crannies, you just gotta wipe off the surface stuff. Exactly the same way we do with like antiquing leather or whatever. It's kind of fun how many of these skills just kind of overlap with each other. Now, since mine isn't like crazy deep, I was afraid if I wiped it off immediately, I would take too much away. So I let it dry, and then I used my jeweler's rouge on the facing side of the leather, because I knew it would provide me with a really nice flat surface. Then I used that to carefully sand that surface away. This left me with all that indented area just a little bit darker than the raised bits, which not only made my letters and design pop more, but it also added just more character to it. At that point, it looked like something, maybe it was like a wizard's ring or something from ancient times. I don't know, I thought it looked cool. And I am so pleased with how that looks. All the lettering is super clear, way more clear than I would have been able to get it if I like scratched it out of paint or something. I just don't have that steady a hand. But you could totally do this with like any stickers you find, or if you do have a more steady hand, scratching it out. There's a boatload of ways you can totally make this happen without any fancy materials. But I did want to do one more thing. That little fire there, that little loop in it was left that way for a reason. I wanted there to be like a red gemstone in there, so it looked like it was the fire, right? Like a ball of fire. So I went to one of those stores that sell like fossils and stones and whatever, and just found this nice little round garnet here. It's the perfect size to fit right into that space. That said, it's like a diamond cut, right? Like a little diamond cut. So it needs to actually seat into the metal. To make this happen, I just secured my ring back onto my slicker brush here and put it into my clamp. Then I used a punch to punch the center of exactly where I wanted that gem to go. Using a small drill bit, I made this starter hole and went just all the way through. I probably didn't have to go all the way through. The little shank or whatever, the bottom part of the cut there was shallow enough that like it probably could have seated without that. But I figured by putting a hole all the way through, when I secured it in with an adhesive, that adhesive would have more of a little ledge to grab onto, my thought. Don't know if it matters, but it won't hurt anything, so why not? Next, I busted out this little round burr bit here just to widen up that hole. That said, I can't find it, but I did experiments on like the fork part of the fork that I cut off earlier just with drill bits, and by using just gradually growing drill bits, I was able to get almost the exact same effect. Just go slowly because you don't want the biggest one to go all the way through, right? You want to just seat the gem into it. Anyways, it left me with this perfect size hole here for my gem to sit into. To make it stick, I'm not using anything too fancy, just this 2-part epoxy by JB Weld. I just made sure I thoroughly combined it all together, and then used a little tiny like piece of wood here to butter that glue right into that opening. Then carefully stuck the gem in place. Around 5 to 10 minutes, check this thing out. It is friggin' gorgeous. The little gem fits right in there. The engraving came out perfectly. It even fits me well and is comfortable. I shot this like a few days ago and I've been wearing it ever since. And like, I love this thing. All the more so because I made it. I made it exactly how I envisioned I would make it. I wrote on it the thing that I wanted to write on, engraved it, seated a stone. It's such a simple and satisfying project. And one that like other people would look at and go like, you made that? How the heck did you do that? Which is always fun. Like you as a crafter, you know, you love that. That's nice. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that project. I enjoyed the hell out of making it. It was so much fun. If you've done something similar or can think of other ways we can do things like this, why don't you leave it down in the comment section below. And if you like what we do here, don't forget to give me some of that like it, love, and subscribe so you know when I release new content. Also, a heads up for any of you that are interested, our camp for next year's Conquest LARP is open. But we have a limited amount of space. We're only letting in about 200 people into our camp. So if you're interested in joining us, click the link in the description below. And if you have no friggin' idea what I'm talking about, check out this video here first, then click the link in the description below. While you do that, I'm gonna go. In the meantime, keep leveling up, you. You made it to the end screen. YouTube loves it when you do that. It's a fantastic way to support this channel. Another fantastic way to support this channel is by joining these people's noble ranks. These are our Patreon members, and we could not do any of this without them. It's thanks to their support that we can afford to mess around with stuff like this and learn cool new tricks. Special shout out to our Grandmaster tier Patreon, Andrew Smith, Froggy, Dragon Designs, and Yuri Sashro. If you like what we do here and want to support us, consider joining our Patreon, link in the description below. Otherwise, you can click on one of these videos that YouTube thinks you'd like, and that helps out a lot too. Now, if you don't mind, I've got to go and forge more rings for, like, you know, the Elf Lords, the Dwarvish King, the Kings of Men. That's a lot to do here. They were all of them deceived.